So I was thinking about what would it take to not have to budget anymore? Is there a way to organize your money management system so that you don't have to track every dollar and obsess about your bank account? Could you not budget and still live within your means, afford your lifestyle, and still reach your various financial goals? This is a lot coming from a financial counselor, I know. After all, I spend a lot of my time helping clients with their budgets, with their cash flow, and with their tracking systems. But despite that, I do believe that for some people, you can move into a world where you spend less time and less energy checking your bank account balances every day, where you can spend freely without sacrificing your long-term financial plan. In other words, not having to budget. At least not in the traditional sense. This is sometimes referred to as loose budgeting. Spoiler alert, moving towards not budgeting is not an overnight process. And watching this video all the way through is not gonna mean that starting tomorrow, you won't have to budget anymore. Instead, the reason I called this video How to Avoid Budgeting for the Rest of Your Life is to explain this process of moving towards loose budgeting, meaning you shouldn't have to budget your money so closely for the rest of your entire life. You should be able to go through phases of loose budgeting, if not get to a point of loose budgeting for the rest of your life. So unless you're already uber wealthy, then I would like to think of it in 3 phases. Phase 1, where you're not budgeting, not tracking at all, everything is chaos and a shit show. Number 2, you move into meticulous budgeting, where you learn how to manage your finances and you track every dollar and know exactly where every dollar goes. Then you move on to loose budgeting, or whatever you want to call it, no budgeting, because it's not your traditional sense of budgeting. Now, most people are going to be stuck somewhere between phase 1 or phase 2. Today, I'm going to cover tips on how to move through these phases and into that 3rd phase so that maybe, just maybe, you can eventually say goodbye to your budget. For those new here, hello and welcome. My name is Lissa Prudencio. I'm an accredited financial counselor, personal finance expert, and co-host of NetNet Podcast. If you're ready to keep on learning about money and building wealth, then make sure you subscribe. What exactly is loose budgeting? What it is a more relaxed approach to managing your finances. So instead of meticulously tracking every expense and sticking to some detailed budget where every single dollar is accounted for on a very specific detailed level, loose budgeting instead focuses on broader financial principles that you adhere to, as well as automated systems that help you maintain your financial stability. And all of it is set up so that you can still achieve your long-term goals. You're not sacrificing your future finances because you're deciding not to budget right now. So full disclosure, this is going to be really hard to do if, number 1, your financial resources are limited to begin with, and 2, if your relationship with money is not great. That said, I still think it is possible. It just might take you longer to move through those first 2 phases into the phase of no budgeting or loose budgeting. So I just want to tailor expectations, because the last thing I want to do is have you try out this loose budgeting method before you're ready to and before your foundations are in place, only to make your finances worse. So proceed with caution, but with curiosity. So phase 1, no budgeting. This is the phase of no budgeting where no budgeting is a bad thing. This is where a lot of people actually begin because they just don't track their finances. The problem here is that when you don't have a clear picture of where your money is going, it's very, very easy to overspend and to accumulate debt. And that goes especially for people with limited resources and limited income. So what you need to understand is if you're in this phase, it's generally not sustainable if you want long-term financial health and if you want to build wealth. So here are some tips of transitioning out of phase 1. Number 1, track your expenses. Start by tracking all of your expenses for at least 1 month so that you have an idea of what your spending habits are. What categories do you spend on the most? Are these things you actually want to be spending on? Number 2, set financial goals. You want to identify short-term goals, long-term goals, just so you can get a general sense of direction and purpose for your money. Knowing these goals is going to help you prioritize. Number 3, create a basic budget. You want to establish a budget that you can allocate towards needs, wants, savings, and paying off debt. And of course, you want to make sure that the budget aligns with your goals. So as you incorporate these things, you are now moving into phase 2, which is meticulous budgeting. This is where you are tracking every dollar that comes in and how it's spent. So full transparency, this can be time consuming and it can be tough for people who don't have personal finance experience. But I will tell you, it is very effective in order to gain control over your finances. I know some people have fears of actually looking at the numbers because of what it might tell them, but you have to kind of work towards that place where you feel comfortable with it and know that this is for your long-term health. It could be uncomfortable now, but what you are doing is setting yourself up for a better financial future. So by being meticulous with your budgeting, you can identify areas where you're overspending. You can make adjustments if things aren't aligned with your financial goals. You can take it all in as information that you can act on. So here are some tips for budgeting effectively during this stage when you are being very meticulous with budgeting. Number 1, use a budgeting tool. You can use apps like YNAB, You Need a Budget, which I love and use, or a simple spreadsheet to track your income and expenses. I'm actually a YNAB certified coach, so if you want me to make a video about YNAB, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, if you want to use a spreadsheet, I got you. I have a cash flow template that I will put in the description so that you can grab that and take a look at your cash flow. All right, number 2, you want to review and adjust your budget regularly. So set aside time every week or every month to review your budget, review your spending, and make necessary adjustments. You can call it a money date and put it in your calendar. This is going to make sure that you stick to it and you do it on a recurring basis and it doesn't just keep getting pushed out. Number 3, you're going to automate savings. As part of your meticulous budget, you're going to be assigning some dollars in your budget towards saving and investing. This is going to make sure that you aren't putting that off any longer. You are going to be consistently saving towards your goals and your future. All right, now before we can talk about phase 3, there's a little bit more to this phase of step 2 on meticulous budgeting. So for some people, this phase of having to track very closely and meticulously, it might take a few months, but for some people, it could take decades. It all depends on your lifestyle expenses as well as your income. But what I hope is since you are here, you are proactive about your finances, you are proactive about building wealth, it's not gonna take decades. So let's talk about a few things that are gonna greatly improve your chances of succeeding when you do move into that loose budgeting stage. Number 1, build an emergency fund, plus add a little bit of buffer in your emergency fund if you do plan to do loose budgeting. So typically an emergency fund can be 3 to 12 months worth of living expenses. It depends on whether or not you have dependents, if you have shared expenses, if you are self-employed versus have a consistent job. To learn all about emergency funds, you can watch my video up here. And on the buffer piece, for someone who wants to transition into loose budgeting, I would suggest also padding your emergency fund by a couple of months. So let's say 3 extra months of living expenses, because as I'm going to mention later on in the video, just because you're not going to be meticulously budgeting anymore, doesn't mean you're still not going to check in on your finances. When you do those check-ins and those audits on your finances, you'll be able to see whether or not you're spending more than you want to be, and in any case, you'll have that extra cushion of funds if you happen to go through a phase where you're spending more. All right, number 2 on your foundations, pay off debt. If you can't completely get out of debt by the time you transition into loose budgeting, then at the very least, try to pay off your high interest debt. It's very imperative at this stage that you also build the habit to stop taking on new debt, at least not mindless debt and not consumer debt. It's a whole different story if you're actually leveraging debt, but that is beyond the scope of this video. Just know, try to get your debt down before you get into this loose budgeting mode. All right, number 3, establish your savings goals and automate. So by now you should have an idea of what your financial goals are in the short term and in the long term. What money do you need and when do you need it? So this is going to determine where you actually park your money or invest your money. But in all cases, you want to be automating your savings and investments. I have another video you can check out if you want to learn about some effective ways to automate your finances, so you can check that out up here. All right, number 4, establish guardrails. Once you transition into this phase where you are loose budgeting and not tracking every single dollar, the goal is ultimately to spend less time and energy on tracking your money and tracking your spending. So what you want to do is to establish some guardrails or incorporate additional systems that are going to help you prevent overspending. For example, you can make it a rule that you're going to check in on your bank account and your finances if you're going to purchase anything above a certain amount. If there's a certain threshold that you don't want to spend over, make that a rule for yourself. Another way you can do this is you can use cash or even a prepaid card for any discretionary spending so that you know when to stop. Another thing you can do is if you utilize one primary spending account, like a checking account, you can put low balance alerts and set it at a pretty high number just so you know when you happen to go below that amount. You can choose what that is, but that is another way where you don't have to meticulously track your budget without having to worry that you're going to overspend. All right, finally, now that you've got those foundations in place, let's talk about what it means to move into the phase of loose budgeting. This, like we mentioned earlier, is when you can relax your budgeting efforts a little bit, maybe a lot of it, because you've already established stronger financial habits and you've put some systems in place. So now the focus is going to be on maintaining a high-level overview instead of having to track every dollar and every penny. So here are some tips once you are in this phase. Number 1, adopt conscious spending. You want to practice mindful spending, and to be honest, you should have already been doing this in the earlier phases, but what this is making sure that every expense you make is aligned with your values and goals. You are not mindlessly spending, you are spending on things because you know it brings value to your life. Number 2, kind of alluded to it earlier, but you still are going to want to do regular check-ins and audits, whether that is once a quarter with a financial planner and financial advisor, or whether that is a money date that you put in your own calendar to do a check-in, to look at your accounts, to look at your budget. Set that up so you have this in place and that you don't go like 3 years without checking and all of a sudden you end up having $0. Doing this just makes sure you stay on track without having to do the day-to-day micromanaging of your finances. All right, number 3, you can use broad categories. Instead of doing the audit or the quarterly budget with detailed categories, you can use broader categories and just look at needs versus wants versus savings. If you want to get more detailed to see like how much you're spending on food as opposed to travel and entertainment, then feel free to do that. You can do it as you wish and as frequently or infrequently as you need to. Finally, number 4, use a budget as needed. So just because you've gotten to this point of living on a loose budget and you love it and it's great, it doesn't mean that you have to stay that way forever or that you can stay that way forever. Our finances are dynamic. They're always changing. Things come up, circumstances change, our income changes. So if something comes up that forces you to change your budgeting technique and maybe you have to go back into phase 2 of meticulous budgeting, just know that you got here once, you can come back to loose budgeting again in the future. All right, in conclusion, while meticulous budgeting, I believe, is an essential phase if you want control over your finances, it is possible to transition to a more relaxed approach on your budgeting over time. You can get there if you plan for it. If you liked this video, please hit the like button, and until next time, peace out.